Okay, that's a little disappointing, but never mind that. In this video, I want to share all of the books that I read in March. I think I have 9 books that I want to talk about, so we'll just start from the top, which is beginning with Helm of Midnight. I read this in a reading vlog. Actually, the first 3 books that I'm going to talk about, I read in a reading vlog. I will link that down below if you're interested in seeing my whole feelings and reactions and responses, etc. But this is kind of a fantasy thriller and my first book by this author. It is leaning sci-fi, and in it we get a few different POVs, but we're primarily following Krona, who is a regulator. She's sort of like a detective, police officer type of person who's working for the state. She is trying to hunt down a serial killer who has stolen a death mask of a very famous mad scientist type of serial killer named Louis Charbon. The thing about these death masks is that they are created, obviously, right as the person dies, and it's a way of preserving not just the soul, but the actual magic and talent and abilities of the person who is being captured in the mask, right? So we get a pretty good look at the characters in the world in this. It is a little bit of a slower start just because we're doing so much world building. This is the beginning of, I think it is going to be a trilogy, or it maybe already is a trilogy. And the author has previously published a lot of sci-fi, and I feel like you can kind of get a taste of that. Like, there's a little bit of a sci-fi element in the flavor of how this is done and in the actual world that it's playing out in. I really enjoyed this a lot. I had a very much Robert Jackson Bennett kind of vibe, City of Stairs energy from this book. I really liked that almost contemporary feeling to the city. And then the element with the magic really reminds me a bit of A Memory Called Empire. So if you like either of those 2 books or you liked this one, give it a try. And I really enjoyed the characters. There's some really unique, interesting, fun to follow characters in this, including a really great sister dynamic that I had a ton of fun reading. And so yeah, overall, I would definitely recommend, especially if you're looking for complex world building, something that doesn't have a whole lot of romance in it, at least not yet. I feel like there could be something maybe later on in the series, but like, it's definitely not a romance forward book. Just go into it knowing it will start off a little bit slower because we're getting time jumps, we're getting world building, but I think there really is quite a bit of payoff by the time you get to the end. So that is Helm of Midnight. The next book that I read is a Wuthering Heights retelling set in the world of ice dancing, or like ice skating. That is The Favorites. This book was unhinged. It was crazy, and I still have been thinking about it. So of course we are following Kat and Heath. Heath is a foster child that's taken in by Kat's family, and they grow up as ice skating partners. They also don't have a whole lot of money. Her father dies, and then they decide, instead of staying in the care of her brother who has some addiction problems and is just, not very stable, that it's better for them to go and pursue ice skating on a professional level full-time when they're teenagers. They get this great opportunity. They go to an ice skating school and meet the Lin twins, who are a brother-sister duo that are also ice skating. And then we just kind of follow the drama of their relationship, primarily with these 2 twins and other skaters, and of their careers. This I listened to on audiobook. It was a wonderful audiobook, and it was very fast-paced. It's told from the POV of Kathy. So she starts off like, oh, you don't know my story, but I'll tell you my story. And then it's punctuated by these interviews, which was what made it translate really well to audiobook, because it's often like a radio interview or like a TV interview with other side characters in the book that are commenting in hindsight on different events that were being told throughout. I really enjoyed it. It was fast-paced. It was perfect for getting out of a reading slump. The end was absolutely insane. If you're looking for a really, really true Wuthering Heights retelling, this one, the end of this might sort of boggle you, and I enjoyed it. It was a really great audiobook, as I've said 10 times. And by the end, I hated pretty much every character in a good way. They were all truly, genuinely vicious and doing ugly stuff to each other, just like they do in the real Wuthering Heights. So that is The Favorites. Oh, after that, okay, I want to talk about a nonfiction book that I read called Big Mall. This is about super malls, or mega malls, and is part memoir of the author's experience growing up going to the West Edmonton Mall, which is a mall that I also grew up going to periodically and have very vivid memories of as a child. She covers topics like mall rats, animals in malls, mall memorials, and like all kinds of other subjects in the history, the sociology of malls, capitalism. It's all kind of like packed into these smaller chapters. Obviously really liked it again. I thought that her voice was really similar to Amanda Montell. So if you like cultish or like word slut, any kind of like these sociological type of books that do sort of a deep dive into a topic like this in a really approachable and fun way, this would be a really good one to check out because it's only like 180 something pages. I appreciate that she doesn't drag things out longer than they have to be just to get like a 400 or 300 page book. She kind of just says what needs to be said on the topic and shares her like thoughts or experiences and then moves on, because I think that's the most irritating thing for me when I'm reading this type of book is when they just kind of drone on and on ad nauseum with an unnecessary amount of like examples or just, I don't know, there's a point often in these kind of books where I feel like people are just blabbing and there's no real value to be taken away anymore, but they're still going. I don't know if that makes sense, but I did not feel this way about Big Mall. I actually really enjoyed it, especially now living in Singapore, because in Singapore, one of the main activities is going to the mall. It's one of the only areas in Singapore that is like free to walk around that has aircon. I don't know, it's just like a big thing here. And so I just found some of that really interesting because there's such a focus on the Canadian West Edmonton Mall. In my mind, I was kind of comparing and contrasting, like, are the malls in Singapore serving a different purpose? Are we engaging with them in a different way? And like also asking my husband who grew up in Singapore, like, what were malls like when you were a kid in like the early 2000s? Yeah, so that is Big Mall. Okay, the next book that I want to chat with you a little bit about is Spindle Splintered. This is actually a short story. I think it was like 100 pages that I read on my phone. And I read with like pretty big text because this is a contemporary sort of portal fantasy style retelling of Sleeping Beauty. We are following a young woman who is turning 21, I think. And on her birthday, her friend plans for her a Sleeping Beauty themed birthday party because she's like super obsessed with Sleeping Beauty. Did like a early master's thesis or something like that at a very young age on Sleeping Beauty because she has a terminal illness. So she really feels a lot of pressure to get things done at a young age, but also has this like sense of there not necessarily being much time left for her. You know, through a series of events, get sucked into like a portal world where there seems to be another woman who is Sleeping Beauty. And then she kind of uses her knowledge of the fairy tales to try and find her way back home. Obviously, this is exploring issues related to living with terminal illness or severe illness. It's looking at agency because the original Sleeping Beauty really didn't have a whole lot, and kind of relating those two things together and playing with some ideas around that. I enjoyed it. It was interesting and good for like a quick, fun read. And yeah, I mean, I don't really have a whole lot to say. I think there were a lot of pop culture sort of references in it, aside from Sleeping Beauty, that tends to turn me off of a book, but I think because this one was short, I didn't mind it so much. And yeah, I read it as part of my 24-hour reading blog, which is linked in the description box. Now, you guys, I found a new favorite book, I'm pretty sure. It's definitely gonna be one of my favorite books. I originally got it from the library, and then I went and I purchased it at a store because I wanted to read it again. So I've read it like 1.5 times. Swimming in the Dark. There's something about the way that this is written that just guts me, okay? Like I felt gutted when I was reading it. It was like such an emotional book. Ugh. Okay, I'll tell you what it's about. So we are following Ludwik and Janos. Janos? I feel like it's Janos. In communist Poland in the 1980s or 1980. And the book is just about them from Ludwig's perspective as their relationship kind of unfurls over the next few months and learn more about one another. The 1980s were the beginning of the end of the Polish communist regime, and I feel like I just learned so much by reading this book, and it made me want to learn more, because this book isn't just about the love of these two men. It is about the intersection between love, class, and politics. I wish I could say that it's a book with a happy ending, but I think that kind of depends on the perspective that you're looking at it from. It is a devastating, bittersweet experience. I had such an immensely vulnerable experience in reading it because of how much vulnerability is in the writing. There's just so few books that can make me think and feel this deeply and absolutely sob at the end. Like, I'm gonna read you the first like paragraph or so of this book. My body feels depleted, like a foreign country after a war, and yet I cannot go back to sleep. I think of you, the face that my memory can conjure up with its rough outlines and fine details, with the gray blue eyes the same color as the Baltic Sea in winter. I think of your face while I get up, while I move in the darkness from the bed to the window, clothes laying around the floor like unfinished thoughts. I don't know, you guys, that's Swimming After Dark, one of the best books I'll have read all year, probably one of my new favorites. So after this devastated me, I needed to read something that was going to be reliably fun and fluffy, and so I picked up Beach Read. Okay, this was a reread. It's my favorite of Emily Henry's. We are following January Andrews, who is a romance writer that moves to a small town after her father died, because when her father died, he left her a house that she didn't know about, and he had like a whole other secret life in, and so she's trying to come to terms with that and everything else that's gone horribly wrong in her life. While next door, her neighbor is a guy that she knew from university named Gus. He is a writer of literary fiction, and they are both experiencing writer's block. So they challenge one another to try and write in each other's genres, because they think that obviously it's easy to write a romance novel, and obviously it's easy to write a literary novel. You need to make it depressing, you need to make it fluffy. Like, there's not a whole lot to it. I always remember this book by this one scene where she stands on her patio and like shouts at him to shut up because he's blasting music in the next house. Because that just feels like something that is very relatable. I have not actually shouted at my neighbors. I wouldn't actually, but like that feeling of like, will you shut up? Yeah, so if you haven't read a romance novel, you want to read one, I do recommend Beach Read, because it's just such a nice balance of fluffy and fun while providing that emotional depth and character development. Yeah, I had a really good time. So that's Beach Read. And after that, I got to read an arc. I was very excited, very lucky to get an arc of Local Heavens. This is by Chris. I will link her channel below because she makes all kinds of really fantastic writing vlogs, and this is her debut novel. And you guys, it was fantastic. It is a cyberpunk retelling of The Great Gatsby, and it's queer. So the book takes off in New York, 2075, and our friend, Filipino-American Nick Carraway, has moved to the city to do a little bit of corporate hacking and pull up some dirt on Jay Gatsby. He's pulled into this assignment by his cousin, Daisy, who also has her fingers in this big corporation, and I thought that this reimagining just worked so well because there's sort of a sexiness to the 1920s that the original Gatsby was written in, and I feel like that really got carried forward with this cyberpunk element, while also fleshing out some of these characters and giving them a little bit more depth in a different way from the original piece of work. And if you're a fan of the original Gatsby, which you don't have to be to pick this up, but if you are, there's a lot of little Easter eggs that she's incorporated into the story that might give you small joy. And I really appreciate the literary quality of her prose. Her writing is such high quality. It's so beautiful, while not being purple or bogged down. It's descriptive and evocative, and so exciting to see her hard work pay off in such a tangible way. Congratulations to Chris. The book comes out on October 14th, 2025. So if you check out her site or her Instagram or whatever, you can pre-order that. And I read it in like 2 or 3 days, so you might still be able to request an arc for yourself from NetGalley. So that was Local Heavens. It is probably the best reimagining or retelling of a classic that I have ever read. No exaggeration. So I also want to tell you about Breach, which is a bit of an older book, I think, and it only has like 300 reviews on Goodreads, but it's so good, you guys. It's also a little bit different from anything that I've read recently because it's a fantasy set in, well, it's a historical fantasy. It's set during the Cold War, again, set in Germany, and the sort of whole premise or concept of this book is that the Berlin Wall is a magic wall. Magic exists in the world. Magic was a big part of World War II. We are following a young woman who is a magician for the United States government. So she is working in West Germany, and they are finding that there is a hole that is growing in the Berlin Wall, and that is a problem and people are freaking out about it. And so she becomes part of this team that is investigating the truth behind the wall, the truth behind the magic, all of that stuff. What I thought was really interesting about this book and how the magic was integrated into the history of the world is that we really get to see how everybody has different attitudes, because in World War II, in this book, a lot of the main people who were using magic during the war was like the Germans and the Russians. So a lot now of the former Allied forces have a lot of suspicion, even though their government is now incorporating magic into like their CIA and stuff. So I can't really say anything else about it because there is so much that's going on, but I also don't want to reveal any of the spoilers. But you should check it out. Even if you are not typically interested in classic historical fantasy, this really reads in the same way that somewhat contemporary urban fantasy would, just with this extra world building twist. So I believe this is a duology. I am picking up the sequel as soon as I can get it from the library because I can't stop thinking about the ending and I need to know. Okay, you guys know how much I loved Titus Alone. I read that almost a year ago. I don't know what happened to time, but I finally finished the second book in the Gormenghast trilogy. The second novel is called Gormenghast. I started this in January. Took me quite a while to finish, but it was worth it. So worth it. So the whole Gormenghast trilogy is following the ecosystem of characters who are living in this Gormenghast castle, which is lorded over by Lord and Lady Groan and their son Titus and their daughter Fuchsia. It's very Dickensian in that all of the characters are very eccentric. There is a real upstairs, downstairs feel to it. And all of these characters are locked into these old rituals and traditions that dictates the whole life of Gormenghast Castle. And a lot of these rituals and traditions have become completely meaningless because they don't even remember what they're for or why they're even doing this anymore. And so book 2 follows the events of book 1, which really felt like a giant prologue in a lot of ways, but was delightful and rich and lush and 100% worth it and necessary to read. Book 2 is starting when Titus is like young teenager, preteen, on the cusp of young adulthood. And as he gets older, he is becoming desperate to know what lays beyond the bounds of his realm, what his life could look like if it were not shaped by these sort of meaningless rituals. This book is an epic gothic. It is unlike anything I have ever read in my life, and it is now one of my #1 favorite series ever. Even though 70% of each book is all vibes, very little like big overarching plot. That usually just comes into play in the last like 30%. But the character work that is happening in these small moments with building up to it are all essential, and it just gives the characters so much depth and so much, like, you feel so much attachment to them. The prose is unlike anything I have ever read. I'm gonna read you a really like pretty famous quote because it's so good. He no longer wanted to kill his foe in darkness and in silence. His lust was to stand naked upon the moonlit stage, with his arms stretched high and his fingers spread, with the warm blood that soaked them sliding down his wrists, spiraling his arms and steaming in the cold night air, to suddenly drop his hands like talons to his breast and tear it open, to expose a heart like a black vegetable. And then, upon the crust of self-exposure and the sweet glory of wickedness, to create some gesture of supreme defiance, lewd and rare, and then, with the towers of Gormenghast around him, cheat the castle of its jealous right and die of his own evil in the moonbeams. Oh my god. It's so dramatic, it's so flowery, and brilliant in my opinion, by my judgment. It's incredible. If you like Edward Gorey, Charles Dickens, Angela Carter, all of that, please pick up Gormenghast. I am obsessed with this series. I'm so obsessed with this series. This part of the video is gonna be like 20 minutes long because it's not just melodrama and like gothic edgelord stuff like that. There are also hysterical moments where, for instance, there's one. This is just one of those like character moments that happens in the book where there's a brother and sister duo, and the sister is like always trying to kind of find a man, and she really wants to at this party, and so she stuffs her bra basically with hot water bottles, and then during the party her brother is like, your bosom is leaking. Just read it, please. I feel like such a nerd going on and on about it to you, but like, please just read it. Gormenghast. So I think that was 9 books. If it wasn't, then too bad. Those were the books that I read in the month of March. I did have a bit of a reading slump, but I feel like I still got to read a fair bit, and I feel like I read some really good books. So if you've read any of the books that I mentioned, I would love to hear about them. I am trying to get back into the habit of filming and uploading regularly once a week, but I am going to be moving in a week and a half. So there will probably be a week or 2 where it will be radio silence, and then I'll be back once again. So if you watched this video, thank you very much, and I will see you again very soon in another video. Bye!